Claustrophobia wasn't supposed to affect people like Diana Mercer, people who ran multinational corporations, people who negotiated billion-dollar mergers in glass-walled conference rooms 40 stories above the ground, people who'd built empires from venture capital and ruthless efficiency. But when the elevator jolted to a stop between the 32nd and 33rd floors of Mercer Financial Tower, Diana's carefully constructed control shattered in exactly 3 seconds. Second 1, the lights flickered. Diana's breath caught. Second 2, the elevator dropped 6 inches before the emergency brakes caught. Diana's hand shot out, found the wall, her designer briefcase hitting the floor. Second 3, complete darkness. And then the emergency lights clicked on. Dim, red, wrong, and Diana realized she couldn't breathe. The attack came fast. Chest tight, vision tunneling, heart hammering so hard she could feel it in her throat. She was 43 years old, worth $3 billion, and she was about to pass out in a stopped elevator in her own building because her body remembered something her conscious mind had spent 25 years trying to forget. She was 12 again, trapped, dark, can't breathe, someone screaming, blood on her hands that wouldn't wash off no matter how hard she scrubbed. Hey, look at me. Diana's eyes snapped to the only other person in the elevator. A man, mid-30s, wearing Navy EMT uniform with a yellow safety vest over it, a medical bag at his feet. She'd barely registered him getting on at the lobby, too busy checking her phone for the market updates that had consumed her morning. Now he was kneeling in front of her, his hands visible and empty, his voice calm in a way that suggested he'd seen this before. "You're having a panic attack," he said. "Not a question, a statement. I need you to breathe with me. Can you do that?" Diana tried to speak, but no sound came out. The walls were closing in. The red emergency light was wrong, all wrong, reminded her of... "4 counts in," he said firmly. "I'll count. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold it. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. He was breathing deliberately, exaggerating each inhale and exhale so she could follow him. Diana's mind was screaming at her to run, to escape, to get out of this metal box before it dropped and killed them both. But his voice was an anchor, steady and unshakable. Again, in for 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Diana forced herself to follow. In for 4, hold for 4, out for 8. The walls didn't move. The elevator didn't drop. The man's face stayed calm, his brown eyes steady, his presence solid in a way that made the panic recede by inches. "Good," he said. "You're doing great. I'm Lucas. Lucas Reeves. I'm a paramedic. You're safe. This elevator isn't going anywhere except back up or down when maintenance fixes it. You're not going to fall. You're not in danger. You're just stuck for a little while. Can you tell me your name?" "Diana," he managed. His voice sounded foreign, thin, scared, nothing like the voice that commanded boardrooms. "Diana Mercer. This is my building." Something flickered in Lucas's expression. Recognition, maybe. But it was gone before Diana could identify it. "Okay, Diana. I'm going to stay right here with you until maintenance lets us out. I've been stuck in elevators before. Comes with the job. The most I've waited is 45 minutes, never more than an hour. We're going to be fine." Diana's phone had fallen when she dropped her briefcase. She could see it on the floor, screen cracked, useless, which meant she couldn't call for help, couldn't check the markets, couldn't distract herself from the fact that she was trapped in a small space with a stranger and her body was convinced she was about to die. "Talk to me," Lucas said. "Tell me about Mercer Financial. You run it?" "Founded it," Diana said, forcing the words out between controlled breaths. 15 years ago. Started with $2 million in seed funding. Now we manage $40 billion in assets." "Impressive," Lucas said, and he sounded like he meant it. Not the calculating interest of people who wanted something from her, but genuine respect. "How'd you get into finance?" Diana almost laughed. The real answer, because money meant security, meant never being trapped again, meant control over every variable in her life. Wasn't something she shared at cocktail parties, much less with strangers in stopped elevators. "I'm good with numbers," she said instead. "And I'm better at risk assessment than emotion. Turns out those are valuable skills on Wall Street." "Better at risk assessment than emotion," Lucas repeated thoughtfully. "That sounds like something someone says when they've been hurt before." Diana's eyes snapped to his face. He wasn't smiling, wasn't probing, just observing. The way paramedics probably learn to observe. Clinical, detached, looking for symptoms beneath the surface.
"I don't talk about my personal life," Diana said stiffly. "Especially not with—" She stopped herself. "Strangers?" Lucas supplied. "Fair. But we're going to be stuck here for a while. And panic attacks get worse when you're silent and spiraling. So let me tell you about my morning instead." He settled more comfortably against the elevator wall, his posture deliberately relaxed. "My daughter, Sophie, she's 6, decided this morning that she needed to bring 17 stuffed animals to school for show and tell. Not 16, not 18, exactly 17. And they all needed names written on tags because what if they got lost?" Despite herself, Diana felt her breathing evening out. "Did you write 17 name tags?" "I wrote 17 name tags," Lucas confirmed. "At 6 a.m., before my shift started, because Sophie's teacher specifically said 1 item for show and tell, and I knew she'd compromise down to 3 if I started at 17. Parenting is all about strategic negotiation." "You're a single father?" The words escaped before Diana could stop them. 3 years now. Sophie's mom left when Sophie was 3. Said being a parent was too hard. She was too young. She'd made a mistake. Signed away her parental rights and moved to Seattle. Haven't heard from her since. Diana felt an unexpected pang. "I'm sorry?" "Don't be," Lucas said, and there was no bitterness in his voice, just acceptance. "Sophie deserves a parent who wants to be there. If her mom couldn't be that person, better she left than stayed and resented us both. It's just harder than I expected, being everything to someone." "Everything," Diana repeated. "Parent, nurse, chef, teacher, entertainment director, monster under the bed checker. Single parents are just people doing 5 jobs for one person's salary and pretending it's fine." Diana thought about her own childhood, the years before 12, before everything changed. Her mother working 3 jobs, exhausted and stretched thin, doing exactly what Lucas was describing. Before the basement, before the fire, before Diana learned that depending on anyone was dangerous. The elevator creaked. Diana's breath caught again. "Just settling," Lucas said immediately. "The cables can hold 15 times this weight. We're fine. Tell me about the worst business deal you ever made." "Why?" "Because distraction helps with panic. And I want to hear what a billionaire considers a bad deal." Diana found herself talking about the tech startup she'd invested in that turned out to be fraud, about the merger that had cost her company $200 million when the target company's books were exposed as fiction, about the risks she'd taken and the ones she'd avoided. And Lucas listened with the kind of attention people rarely gave her anymore. Not because she was rich, not because she was powerful, but because he was genuinely curious. 40 minutes later, when the elevator finally jolted back to life and began its slow ascent to the 33rd floor, Diana realized something strange. She was disappointed. She'd spent 40 minutes trapped in a small space with a stranger, and instead of spiraling into full panic, she'd felt safe, seen, present in a way she hadn't been in years. The doors opened. Diana grabbed her briefcase, her cracked phone, preparing to exit back into her carefully controlled life. Lucas picked up his medical bag, checked his watch. "I'm late for my shift. But Diana, if you ever need to talk to someone who's been stuck in elevators before, literally and metaphorically." He pulled out a business card. Not fancy, just his name, Lucas Reeves, paramedic, and a phone number. "Call me." Diana took the card, their fingers brushing for just a moment. "Why would you want me to call you?" Lucas smiled. Genuine, warm, the kind of smile that suggested he hadn't learned to weaponize kindness yet. "Because in 40 minutes, you told me about every business deal you've ever made. But you didn't tell me why a billionaire CEO has panic attacks in elevators. And I think you need to tell someone. Eventually, when you're ready." He walked away, his yellow safety vest visible until he turned the corner. And Diana stood in the hallway of her own building, holding a paramedic's business card, wondering why a stranger's observation had cracked something open in her chest that 25 years of therapy and medication hadn't touched.
Before we continue, tell us in the comments where in the world you're watching from. We love knowing how far these stories of hope and resilience travel. Your comments inspire us to keep bringing you powerful narratives every week. Diana put Lucas's card in her desk drawer and told herself she'd throw it away later. She had meetings, investor calls, a merger to finalize. She didn't have time to think about paramedics who made their daughters 17 name tags or spoke to panicking billionaires like they were human instead of assets. But 3 days later, she was stuck in traffic. Unusual for someone with a driver, but she'd given Marcus the day off because her therapist said she needed to practice normal experiences. And her phone rang with a number she didn't recognize. "Miss Mercer, this is Bay General Hospital. We have a Lucas Reeves here who's asking for you. He's been injured in the line of duty, and you're listed as his emergency contact." Diana's world tilted. I'm not his emergency contact. I barely know him." "He was conscious when paramedics brought him in. He gave your name specifically. Said to tell you," the nurse paused, checking notes, "said to tell you he's stuck at a different kind of elevator now, and he could use someone who understands panic." Diana's hands tightened on the steering wheel. Every instinct screamed at her to decline, to hang up, to protect herself from connection. But she heard herself say, "I'll be there in 20 minutes. Bay General was the kind of place where Diana usually wrote charity checks instead of visiting. Public hospital, understaffed, serving a population that couldn't afford private care. She felt conspicuous in her Prada suit, walking through the emergency department, but nobody paid her attention. Just another visitor in a sea of worried faces. Lucas was in a curtained area, his left arm in a sling, butterfly bandages across his forehead, looking exhausted but alert. A little girl, Sophie, Diana realized, sat in a chair beside his bed, clutching a stuffed elephant and crying quietly. "Diana," Lucas said when she appeared, "you came." I'm not his emergency contact. I barely know him." "Because Sophie's grandparents are on a cruise in Alaska and won't be back for 3 days, and I have exactly 0 friends who aren't on shift right now. And I thought maybe the woman who spent 40 minutes telling me about derivatives and risk management might be willing to spend 40 minutes keeping a 6-year-old company while I get x-rays." Diana looked at Sophie, small, scared, her face blotchy from crying. The little girl looked at Diana with enormous brown eyes and whispered, "Are you Daddy's friend?" I have no idea how to answer that. I met your dad in an elevator. Elevators are scary, she said seriously. I don't like them. Me neither, Diana admitted before she could stop herself. Really? Sophie's tears paused. But you're a grown-up. Grown-ups aren't scared of things. Some of us are, Diana said, sitting carefully on the edge of Lucas's bed because there weren't any other chairs. We're just better at hiding it. A doctor appeared, clipboard in hand. Mr. Reeves, we need to take you for imaging. Should take about 30 minutes. Your daughter? Can stay with me. Diana heard herself say, if that's okay with Lucas. Lucas's expression was unreadable. Grateful, maybe, or surprised. Diana, you don't have to. I'm already here, Diana interrupted, and I've successfully negotiated with boards full of hostile executives. I think I can handle one 6-year-old for 30 minutes.
After Lucas was wheeled away, Diana and Sophie sat in uncomfortable silence. Diana had no experience with children, had deliberately avoided them, the way she avoided anything that required vulnerability or emotional investment. "What's your elephant's name?" Diana asked finally, because she had to say something. "Dr. Trunks," Sophie said, hugging the stuffed animal tighter. "Daddy gave him to me when I was little and got scared at night. He said Dr. Trunks was brave and would protect me." "That's a good name," Diana said. "What were you scared of when you were little?" Diana felt her throat tighten. Being trapped in small spaces. Like elevators? Like elevators. "What happened?" Sophie asked, with the brutal directness of 6-year-olds who hadn't learned that some questions weren't polite. Diana thought about deflecting, changing the subject, protecting herself the way she always did. But Sophie was looking at her with such open curiosity, such lack of judgment, that the truth escaped. "When I was 12, Diana said quietly, there was a fire in my apartment building. My mother and I got trapped in the basement trying to escape. The smoke was so thick I couldn't see anything. I couldn't breathe. I thought we were going to die. We almost did. The firefighters found us just in time, but my mother, she had smoke inhalation, lung damage. She died 6 months later." Sophie's eyes went wide. "Your mommy died?" "Yes." "Mine left," Sophie said. "Daddy says she didn't want to be a mommy anymore, that it wasn't my fault, but sometimes I think maybe if I'd been better, she would have stayed." Diana felt something crack in her chest. It wasn't your fault. Parents who leave, that's about them, not about their children. "But you stayed," Sophie observed, "when Daddy asked you to come, even though you're scared of places like hospitals where everyone is sad. You stayed anyway." Diana realized with a jolt that she was right. She was terrified of hospitals, had been since her mother's death, since watching machines breathe for someone who couldn't breathe on their own, but she'd come anyway. For Lucas. Or maybe for the version of herself who'd spent 40 minutes in a stopped elevator feeling seen. "Your dad helped me when I was scared, so I wanted to help him back. That's what friends do," Sophie declared with 6-year-old certainty. "Help each other when they're scared. So, you're Daddy's friend now. That means you're my friend too." Diana had built a financial empire on the principle that connection was weakness, that depending on others meant giving them power to hurt you. But sitting in a hospital room with the 6-year-old who just decided they were friends, she felt that principle crodling. Lucas's injury turned out to be minor. Dislocated shoulder from lifting a patient, concussion from hitting his head on the ambulance door. They kept him overnight for observation, which created a new problem. Sophie needed somewhere to stay, and Lucas's backup options were exhausted. "I'll take her," Diana heard herself say. Lucas stared at her. "Diana, you don't have to. Your grandparents are on a cruise. You have no other options." And Diana paused, choosing words carefully. "Sophie and I are friends now." She said so, and friends help each other. That's how Diana Mercer Billionaire CEO who'd spent 25 years avoiding emotional attachment, ended up with a 6-year-old in her minimalist penthouse overlooking San Francisco Bay. Sophie stared at the floor-to-ceiling windows with wide eyes. "This is where you live? It's like a castle, but sad. There's no colors." Diana looked at her home through Sophie's eyes. Chrome and glass and white leather. Art that cost millions but conveyed nothing. A space designed to impress, not comfort. A fortress, not a home. "I don't usually have visitors," Diana said. "That's because nobody wants to visit somewhere sad," Sophie declared. She pulled out her markers, 17 colors, Diana noticed with a small smile, and commandeered the glass coffee table. "Can I draw here?" "Yes," Diana said, even though the table cost $40,000 and was absolutely not designed for children with markers. While Sophie drew, Diana ordered dinner. Pizza, because that's what children ate, right? And found herself telling Sophie about her work, her company, the deals she'd made. Sophie listened with the kind of attention that suggested she understood nothing but cared anyway. "Why do you work so much?" Sophie asked around a mouthful of cheese. "Because work is predictable. Numbers don't hurt you. Contracts don't leave. Success is something I can control." "But you're lonely," Sophie observed. "Daddy says people who work all the time are usually lonely. That's why he stopped working so much after Mommy left. He said I was more important than being a paramedic all the time." Diana felt tears threatening. Not for herself, but for Lucas, who'd made the choice Diana's mother never got to make, prioritizing presence over productivity, choosing connection even when it meant financial sacrifice. "Your dad is a good man," Diana said. "The best," Sophie agreed. She showed Diana her drawing, a stick figure woman with yellow hair. Diana's was blonde, close enough. Holding hands with 2 smaller figures. "That's you and me and Daddy. We're friends now. Friends are like family, but you get to pick them." Diana stared at that drawing, crude, childish, perfect, and realized she'd been picked. By a 6-year-old who'd decided 45 minutes was enough time to decide Diana was worth knowing. By a paramedic who'd given her her emergency contact information, even though they were strangers. By people who saw through her walls and chose connection anyway. That night, Diana lay awake in her guest room. She'd given Sophie her bed because the master suite was the only room with any color. And for the first time in 25 years, she let herself remember that day in the basement. Not just the fear and the smoke, but what came before. Her mother laughing that morning, making pancakes shaped like cartoon characters, promising Diana they'd go to the movies that weekend. Being present and alive and there, and then gone. Not because she left, but because a landlord had ignored fire code violations and a building had burned. And sometimes people died for no good reason at all. Diana had spent 25 years protecting herself from that kind of loss, had built walls so high that nobody could get close enough to leave, had measured success in dollars instead of connections, because money didn't die unexpectedly. But it also didn't make pancakes or offer emergency contact cards or decide you were worth knowing.
Lucas was released from the hospital the next morning. Diana picked him up, with Sophie, who'd insisted on making a "Welcome Home Daddy" sign that was 80% glitter, and drove them back to Lucas's apartment. Diana had expected something modest. She wasn't prepared for barely functional. The apartment was a 1-bedroom in a building that should have been condemned. Water stains on the ceiling, carpet that had been beige sometime in the previous century, a kitchen with exactly 2 working burners, and Sophie's room, not really a room, just a corner of the living room partitioned with a curtain, where a twin bed and a dresser missing 2 drawers created something resembling privacy. "This is where you live?" Diana couldn't keep the shock from her voice. Lucas's jaw tightened. "Paramedics don't make investment banker salaries.
This is what I can afford on my own while paying for Sophie's school and childcare and everything else a kid needs." "This place is a fire hazard," Diana said, and immediately regretted it when Lucas flinched. I know it's not great, but it's what I can afford while working 40 hours a week instead of 80, because Sophie needs a dad who's home for dinner, not a dad who makes more money but is never there. I chose presence over paycheck. It's not perfect, but it's the best I can do while working 40 hours a week instead of 80. Because Sophie needs a dad who's home for dinner, not a dad who makes more money but is never there. I chose presence over paycheck. It's not perfect, but it's the best I can do. Diana thought about her penthouse. 3 bedrooms she never used, a view worth millions, space designed for entertaining people she never invited. She'd chosen paycheck over presence, had told herself it was success. But standing in Lucas's cramped apartment, watching Sophie hug her father and tell him about the castles she'd stayed in, Diana wondered which of them had actually chosen correctly. "I need to tell you something, and you're going to think I'm crazy or manipulative or trying to buy something, but I'm not. I'm trying to help." Lucas waited, his expression guarded. "My company owns 17 apartment buildings in this city. One of them is in Pacific Heights. Rent-controlled units mixed with market rate. We have a vacancy. 2-bedroom, updated kitchen, working heat, no water damage. It's yours if you want it." "I can't afford Pacific Heights," Lucas said immediately. "Rent-controlled means you'd pay what you pay here. Same price, better building. It's not charity. It's just reallocating resources to someone who actually needs them." "Why? Why would you do this? You barely know us." "Because Sophie drew me into your family," Diana said, gesturing to the glitter sign. "Because you gave me your emergency contact number after knowing me for 40 minutes. Because your apartment is a fire hazard and I can't stand the thought of someone else dying in a fire because a building wasn't maintained properly. Because I have resources and you have need, and I'm tired of pretending that's not a solvable problem." Lucas stared at her. "This is insane. People don't just give other people apartments." "I'm not giving, I'm offering. There's a difference. You still pay rent, you still maintain your independence. I'm just opening a door you didn't know was unlocked." "Why? Why would you do this? Really, what do you want from us?" Diana thought about lying, deflecting, protecting herself, but Sophie was watching with those enormous eyes, and Lucas deserved honesty. "I want to be the kind of person who helps, instead of the kind who hoards resources and calls it success. I want to be someone who might have saved my mother if I'd been older, richer, powerful enough to make landlords follow fire codes. I can't save her, but maybe I can keep someone else's mother from dying in a building that should have been condemned." "You're not my redemption project," Lucas said, but his voice was softer. "No," Diana agreed. "You're just someone I met in an elevator who helped me breathe, and now I'm helping you breathe. Different kind of help, but help nonetheless." Sophie tugged on her father's shirt. "Daddy, can we see the new place? Please, I want my own room. A real room, not just a curtain." Lucas looked at his daughter, and Diana saw the exact moment he made the choice. Not for himself, for Sophie. The way he'd probably made every choice since becoming a single father, prioritizing his child over his pride. "We'll look at it, but Diana, we're paying rent, full rent. Whatever the rent-controlled rate is,
We're paying it. It's not charity. It's not charity, Diana confirmed. It's friendship, apparently.
Moving day was chaos. Diana hired movers. Lucas protested, Diana ignored him, and spent 6 hours helping unpack boxes, assemble furniture, and teach Sophie that elevators in newer buildings were significantly safer than the ones in their old place. "But I'm still scared," Sophie whispered as they rode up to the 4th floor with another load of boxes. "Me too," Diana admitted. "But your dad taught me something in a stopped elevator. Fear doesn't mean you stop moving. It just means you breathe through it." She demonstrated the 4-count breathing Lucas had taught her. Sophie copied, her small chest rising and falling deliberately. And when the doors opened, Sophie took Diana's hand and said, "We're brave together." Diana felt something fundamental shift in her chest. She'd spent 25 years being brave alone. The idea of being brave with someone else, of shared courage instead of isolated strength, was entirely foreign and strangely appealing. That night, after the movers left and Sophie was asleep in her new bedroom, with walls, not curtains, Lucas and Diana sat on his new balcony overlooking the city, the kind of view Diana had in her penthouse, but somehow it looked different from 4 stories up instead of 40. "I need to tell you something, and you're gonna think I'm insane or stalking you or something. But I'm not. It's just complicated." Diana's walls immediately went up. "What?" 25 years ago, my father was a firefighter. He was part of the crew that responded to an apartment fire in the Mission District. Older building, fire code violations, a landlord who'd ignored safety requirements for years. The fire trapped people in the basement. My father and his crew got most of them out, but Diana's breath stopped. "But not everyone?" "There was a woman," Lucas continued, his voice quiet. "Emily Mercer. Smoke inhalation. They got her to the hospital, but the damage was too extensive. She died 6 months later. And my father? He never forgave himself. Said that if they'd gotten there 5 minutes earlier, if the landlord had maintained proper exits, if the smoke detectors had been working, she might have lived. He carried that guilt until the day he died. Heart attack at 52. I was 18. Your father saved my mother and me, Diana whispered. We were in that basement. Emily Mercer was my mother. I know. I recognized your name when you said it in the elevator. Emily Mercer's daughter. The girl my father talked about for years. The one who survived. He always wondered what happened to you. If you were okay. If the trauma destroyed you or if you found a way through it. Diana felt like she couldn't breathe. You knew. This whole time. You knew who I was. I knew who you'd been, Lucas corrected. I didn't know who you'd become. And when we got stuck in that elevator and you started panicking, I realized you're still trapped. Not in a basement, not in a fire, but in that moment. You've been stuck for 25 years. And you thought you could save me? Diana's voice came out bitter. Finish what your father started? Fix the girl he couldn't fix? No, Lucas said firmly. I thought maybe we could save each other. Because I've been stuck too. Different trap, same result. My father died carrying guilt that wasn't his, and I've been carrying it for him. Trying to save everyone, trying to be perfect, trying to make sure nobody else dies because of system failures or building code violations or random chance. I'm a paramedic because I'm trying to finish my father's work. But you can't save everyone. You can only save the people right in front of you. Diana stood up, paced to the edge of the balcony. Below, the city glittered, safe, distant, controllable from up here. You should have told me. From the beginning, you should have said that my dead father saved your dying mother? That we're connected by trauma and loss and fire. Yeah, that would have been a great conversation starter in a stopped elevator with a woman having a panic attack. Hi, I'm the son of the firefighter who failed to save your mother completely.
real comforting. He didn't fail, Diana said, the words surprising her. He saved me. He got us out. My mother had 6 more months. 6 months where she saw me grow up a little more. 6 months where she told me she loved me and was proud of me and that I shouldn't let fear stop me from living. Your father gave me those 6 months. That's not failure. Lucas's eyes were bright with unshed tears. He never saw it that way. He died thinking he'd failed, thinking 5 more minutes might have changed everything. Maybe, Diana said. Or maybe she would have died anyway. Maybe the only thing that changes is how much we torture ourselves over things we can't control. She turned to face Lucas. You've been carrying your father's guilt. I've been carrying my mother's death. Both of us stuck. Both of us trapped in the past. So what do we do? Diana thought about this. About 25 years of building walls, avoiding connection, measuring success in dollars because dollars couldn't die. About Sophie deciding they were friends in 45 minutes. About Lucas teaching her to breathe in a stopped elevator. About being brave together instead of alone. We help each other get unstuck. Your father saved me once. Now you're helping me save myself. That's enough. That's more than enough.
Diana did what she did best. She took emotion and turned it into action. Within 2 weeks, she'd established the Emily Reeves Foundation, named for both her mother and Lucas's father, dedicated to fire safety, building code enforcement, and support for families affected by residential fires. "You don't have to do this," Lucas protested when she showed him the plans. "I'm not doing it for you," Diana said. "I'm doing it because you were right. I've been stuck for 25 years, building an empire to prove I survived. But survival isn't the same as living. And maybe I can turn that survival into something that actually helps people." She used her financial expertise and Lucas's frontline experience to create programs that addressed root causes. Funding for building upgrades in low-income housing, legal advocacy for tenants facing fire code violations, emergency assistance for families displaced by fires, and therapy for survivors dealing with trauma. And for the first time in 25 years, Diana's work felt meaningful. Not because it made money, though the foundation was well-funded, but because it was making a difference. A tangible, measurable, human difference. "You've changed," her CFO observed during a quarterly review. "You're different than you were 6 months ago." "I got stuck in an elevator. It gave me perspective." But it wasn't just the elevator. It was Lucas, who'd shown her that connection wasn't weakness. It was Sophie, who'd decided they were friends and refused to accept otherwise. It was learning that her mother's last months had been a gift from Lucas's father, that trauma and loss were tangled with heroism and sacrifice in ways she'd never understood. It was realizing that being stuck didn't mean you couldn't move. It just meant you needed help finding the way out.
6 months after the elevator, Diana and Lucas sat in the Foundation's new office. Modest space, not the executive suite Diana was used to, but functional and warm in ways her corporate headquarters never managed. Sophie was there too, coloring at a table in the corner, her 17 markers spread out in careful organization. She'd insisted on helping Aunt Diana, the title had stuck despite Diana's protests, set up the space. "We've received 200 applications for emergency housing assistance," Lucas reported, "and the Building Code Advocacy team has successfully pressured the city to inspect 15 properties that tenants flagged as dangerous. 3 have been brought up to code, 1 was condemned and residents relocated." "So, we're making a difference," Diana said. "We're making a difference," Lucas confirmed. He paused, choosing words carefully. "Can I ask you something personal?" "After everything?" "Yes." Are you still having panic attacks in elevators? Diana thought about this. Sometimes, but I've learned... She paused. I've learned that panic doesn't mean I'm broken. It means I survived something traumatic. And now I know how to breathe through it. Your father gave me 6 more months with my mother. You gave me tools to live the rest of my life. That's more than I ever expected from a stopped elevator. What about connection? Lucas asked quietly. Are you still afraid of that? Diana looked at Sophie, who was showing her latest drawing to an imaginary audience, at Lucas, who'd taken a risk offering his emergency contact to a stranger, at the foundation they'd built together. Not romantic, not quite friendship, but something meaningful nonetheless. I'm learning, Diana admitted. I spent 25 years believing connection was dangerous, that loving people meant they could hurt you. But you and Sophie, you've shown me that isolation hurts worse than connection, that being stuck alone is more painful than being brave with others. So, what happens now? With us?
Diana felt her heart skip. They'd been dancing around this for months. Professional partnership that felt like more. Friendship that carried weight beyond casual. She'd caught herself noticing the way Lucas smiled when Sophie made him laugh. The way his hand would brush hers when they reviewed foundation documents. The way he looked at her sometimes, like he was seeing past the walls, into the scared 12-year-old who'd survived fires and built fortresses. I don't know, Diana said honestly. I've never done this before, the getting close to people thing, the letting someone in thing. I'm probably going to be terrible at it. Probably, Lucas agreed with a small smile. But you were terrible at breathing through panic attacks too, and you learned. Are you saying I should practice emotional connection the way I practiced breathing exercises? I'm saying maybe we both need practice, Lucas said. I've been so focused on being Sophie's dad and my father's redemption that I haven't let anyone close either. Maybe we practice together. No pressure, no expectations, just seeing if 2 people who got stuck in an elevator can figure out how to be unstuck in the rest of their lives. Diana felt something warm in her chest. Not panic, not fear. Something gentler. Hope, maybe. Or possibility. I'd like that, she said, the practicing together part. Sophie appeared at Diana's elbow, holding up her drawing. I drew us again, but this time everyone's smiling, because we're not sad anymore. We're family. Diana looked at the drawing. 3 stick figures holding hands, surrounded by hearts and flowers and stars. Childish, perfect, everything her life had been missing. We're family, Diana repeated, and maybe, for the first time, she believed it. The elevator in Mercer Financial Tower had been completely renovated. Better ventilation, updated emergency systems, clearer communication with building maintenance. Diana had made sure of it, because if she had to ride elevators for work, they were going to be as safe as humanly possible. But she still got nervous sometimes, still felt her breath catch when the doors closed. 4 counts in, Lucas said beside her, his hand finding hers. 1, 2, 3, 4. They breathed together. Diana, Lucas, and Sophie, now 8 and carrying exactly 19 markers to a foundation event, because 17 was last year's number. The elevator rose smoothly. No stops, no panic. Just 3 people who'd found each other in a stopped elevator and built a life from shared trauma and chosen family. Did you ever think, Lucas asked as they reached the 40th floor, that getting stuck would lead to this? Never, Diana admitted. I thought connection was dangerous, that letting people close meant giving them power to hurt me. But you and Sophie, you taught me that isolation hurts worse, that being stuck alone is more painful than being brave together. We're brave together, Sophie declared, echoing words Diana had said to her 2 years ago. That's what makes us family, not blood. Choice.
The doors opened to the Foundation's annual gala. 500 people gathered to celebrate 2 years of fire safety advocacy, building code enforcement, and support for survivors. The Emily Reeves Foundation had become one of the most effective housing safety organizations in the country, praised for its combination of Diana's financial expertise and Lucas's frontline perspective. "Ready?" Lucas asked, squeezing Diana's hand. "Ready," Diana confirmed. They walked into the event together, not as CEO and paramedic, not as survivor and rescuer's son, but as partners. In the Foundation, in parenting Sophie, in building lives that honored the people they'd lost by helping the people they could save.
Diana gave the keynote speech, talking about fire safety and building codes and the importance of treating housing as a human right. But at the end, she added something personal. 25 years ago, Diana said, I was trapped in a basement during a fire. Firefighter Thomas Reeves saved my life. He got my mother and me out with minutes to spare. My mother died anyway, smoke inhalation, complications that couldn't be fixed, but she had 6 more months. 6 months because of Thomas Reeves' courage. And 25 years later, his son saved me again. Not from fire, from being trapped in the past, from believing that survival meant isolation instead of connection. She looked at Lucas and Sophie in the front row. The Emily Reeves Foundation exists because 2 families were broken by the same fire. But we're not broken anymore. We're healing. Together. That's what this foundation represents. The idea that trauma doesn't have to define you. That being stuck doesn't have to be permanent. That sometimes the elevator stops and you meet exactly the person you need to help you breathe. The applause was thunderous, but Diana barely heard it. She was watching Lucas smile, that same genuine, warm smile from 2 years ago in a stopped elevator, and Sophie holding up a drawing of 3 stick figures with family written in enormous letters across the top. After the event, after the donors and the speeches and the recognition, the 3 of them stood on the same balcony where Lucas had told Diana about his father, where she'd realized their traumas were tangled together, where they'd started practicing connection. "What are you thinking?" Lucas asked. "That I'm not stuck anymore. That for 25 years I measured success in dollars and deals and control, but success is actually this: standing on a balcony with people I love, knowing that being brave together is better than being strong alone." "Are you saying you love us?" Sophie asked, with 8-year-old directness. Diana had spent 25 years avoiding that word. Love meant vulnerability. Love meant people could leave, could die, could hurt you. But it also meant Sophie deciding you were family in 45 minutes. It meant Lucas teaching you to breathe in a stopped elevator. It meant building foundations that honored the dead by helping the living. "Yes," Diana said, "I love you. Both of you. I'm probably terrible at showing it, but I'm learning." "You're great at showing it," Sophie declared. "You let me draw on your fancy table, you gave us a home, you built a whole foundation for people who got hurt like you did. That's love." "She's smarter than both of us," Lucas observed. "Obviously," Diana agreed. They stood there, 3 people connected by trauma and choice, by stopped elevators and shared courage, watching the city lights and breathing together. 4 counts in, 4 counts hold, 8 counts out. Diana had been stuck for 25 years, but she'd learned something crucial. Being stuck didn't mean you couldn't move. It just meant you needed help finding the way out. And sometimes that help came from a paramedic in a stopped elevator, a 6-year-old with 17 markers, a father's heroism reaching across decades, a choice to be brave together instead of strong alone. The elevator had stopped, but Diana's life had finally started.
If this story touched your heart, you've experienced the power of Becca's stories. We create narratives about billionaire CEOs trapped by trauma, single dad paramedics who unlock the past, stopped elevators that become therapy sessions, and the courage to breathe through panic with someone who understands. Subscribe to Becca Stories and join our community that believes in 4-count breathing, in emergency contacts given to strangers, in 6-year-olds who decide you're family, and in the revolution of realizing connection isn't weakness, it's survival. Every week, we bring you stories of parents who save children across decades, of CEOs who build foundations instead of just fortunes, and of love that starts with, "You're having a panic attack," and grows into, "We're brave together." Share this story with someone who's stuck in their past, who's afraid of elevators or connection or vulnerability. Comment below and tell us about a time when a stranger helped you breathe, when trauma became purpose, when you learned that being brave together is better than being strong alone. Because here at Becca Stories, we believe that firefighters' children become paramedics, that stopped elevators unlock more than doors, that 6-year-olds are family architects, and that success is measured in whether you can breathe through panic instead of run from it. Until next time, remember, you're not broken, you're stuck, and being stuck just means you need help finding the way out. 4 counts in, 4 counts hold, 8 counts out. Breathe. Choose connection. Be brave together. That's what heroes do.